questions while I'm up here.
Let's do this. I'm going to ask the first two, and then Mark, if you stand up and say your question, and if you could repeat it in case. First question, a lot of talk about the great quarterbacks in America this year. The Tyler Wilsons, the Barkley, and the kid at West Virginia. Maybe talk about some of those quarterbacks, how Tyler Wilson stacks up there. And then maybe, are there any surprise teams in the SEC that maybe nobody's looking at, especially maybe in the West or East, that might pop up?
I think when you stack up Tyler Wilson, you got to put him in the top 10 without a doubt of quarterbacks in the country. You've got your Matt Barkleys, you've got your quarterbacks Aaron Murray at Georgia, quarterbacks in the conference that are extremely good. You got to put him in the top 10 nationally. Geno Smith is a very good quarterback at West Virginia. There are a lot of good quarterbacks out there. I think when you look at the scope of it, he fits right in there. And I think if you're looking for a surprise team this year in the conference, it's got to be Tennessee. No one's talking about the Volunteers. And if you look at their situation, they've got some of the best wide receivers that were injured last year. They've got a quarterback with Bray that can get the ball to any of them. Their offensive line is pretty good this year. They have a new defensive coordinator in Sal Sinceri, who was a linebacker coach at Alabama last year. A lot of enthusiasm there, and they got the #1 linebacker in the country out of Texas this year. So if you're looking for a team that could surprise a few teams, look at Tennessee this season.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. What chance do you see of Arkansas State hanging with Oregon? And the other question I have, with you being a Pitt alum, you were familiar with the situation involving Jeff Long and Walt Harris. What similarities do you see from the situation with Jeff Long and Walt Harris and Jeff Long and Bobby Petrino?
Thank you. Did you all hear that question? The similarities between Jeff Long and what happened at Pittsburgh with Walt Harris and Jeff Long, what happened at Arkansas with Bobby Petrino, those are two different situations. With the problem that happened at Pitt with Walt Harris, he was the head coach of my alma mater, the University of Pittsburgh, and he was always one of those guys that was always looking for the next job. Well, at that time, there were jobs that came up. The Stanford job came up, and he went out and interviewed for the job and didn't tell Pittsburgh, and he came back, and he comes back to Pittsburgh, and he wants to take the Stanford job, and things don't go well there, so he wants to come back to Pittsburgh after Pittsburgh qualified for a BCS game in the Fiesta Bowl. Then he wants to come back to Pittsburgh in mid-spring. At that point, Jeff just cut him loose. He said, if you want to go, go. You know, we're not going to have a coach that's not committed to the University of Pittsburgh, you go. It's totally different from the Bobby Petrino situation where Bobby he wasn't as truthful with Jeff as he should have been. And the situation in Pittsburgh is everybody knew that Walt Harris was looking for another job. The other question about Arkansas and Oregon, two different teams. They don't play each other this year.
Arkansas State.
Arkansas State. Oh, goo. Well, Arkansas State. the Red Wolves, they've got a little bit of work cut out for them the first 3 games of the season. At Oregon, at Nebraska, 2 out of the first 3 games. And I think I stated this before on radio today. If I'm Gus Malzahn, rest your starters. Play them in conference. Don't worry about those games. Those are big check games. Go there, get the check, play your starters for a series, put them on the bench. Treat it like a preseason game. If I was a head coach, I would do that. I would treat it like it's an NFL first preseason game. Go out for 1 quarter or something like that and get them off the field.
You can't answer this question, but if your son was a high school senior, top recruit, where would you send him?
My son was a high school senior, top recruit. You're going to hate this, but I would send him to Alabama. These are the reasons why. Not only has Nick Saban been one of the best recruiters over the last few years, he's the best developer of talent. Look at the NFL draft and NFL rosters. If I wanted my son to get to the next level and play in the NFL, I would have him go there. You know, they've got more players at Alabama that are starting on roster this year than any other school in the NFL. And more players drafted last year than any other school in the NFL. So, you know, until somebody does a better job, you know, you look at all the players that he's got there that get to the next level. And just look at it realistically. They're on an academic athletic scholarship. If they weren't good football players, they wouldn't be getting a scholarship. So most of the players, their dreams are to get to the NFL and hopefully get to the next level to play major college football. If you can stand up, please.
Yes, I heard you mention this morning on the radio that you thought Arkansas was in a position to attract a big-time candidate for its program. Mention some names of some coaches that you think might be some good fits for them to look at.
Well, if you look at the program, and I said what they've done the last 2 years, they've created their own monster because now you've got to fill that position with a big name. And the big names that are out there that are going to be available, you don't know at this time. You take a Butch Jones to Cincinnati, he's done a great job there. Charlie Strong's done a great job at Louisville. That would be a bump up and move. I don't know if it's a position where you want to take a coordinator right now. If you want a young defensive rising coordinator to take the job, I'd look at Manny Diaz from Texas. He's a guy that coached at Mississippi State. He's coached in the SEC. He's done a terrific job at Texas in that move up to Texas. If you want to look at Mark Stoops at Florida State, somebody that's young, that's aggressive, because I think right now, if you don't get the it coach, the big name coach, you've got to get one great, young, hip, attractive guy that's a recruiter, that knows about getting on social media, that knows how to react and to attract these young kids, because they're on social media all the time. And I think that's the route you go. But if there's a big name out there that you can get, you go get them. And most of the big names, you can't get them because they're locking up these coaches. You see all the extensions. It's almost like every other week you're seeing another coach get an extension. You know, why does Matt Brown need an extension at 2020? I mean, he's already got an extension to like 2016. Why does he need an additional extension? He's going to be there as long as he wants anyway. So they're continually giving coaches extensions so they don't lose them. And the way the money game is going right now, it's going to be tough to get that name. But if he's out there, if Jeff Long wants him, he's going to be like a rabid dog and he's going to get him. Because you saw how he got Bobby Petrino. He took him from the NFL. So if he targets his guy, he'll get him. I think if I was Bobby Petrino right now, I'd let the situation die down as much as possible. He had an active contrition coming on ESPN about a week ago. He came up and he told his story and he told everybody how sorry he was and how sad he was. If I'm Bobby Petrino right now, I'd take a year off. I'd try to go out and get a job as an offensive coordinator someplace, maybe in Conference USA or not one of the major conferences, to at least get back into the game and reestablish himself. And then down the road, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years, he may have another opportunity to be a head coach again. But right now, he's as toxic as Jim Tressel to try to hire.
This question has more to do with your NFL career, Mark. Late last week in Los Angeles Superior Court, the NFL filed a lawsuit against every insurance company that has been on the league's coverage since 1968. The NFL is being sued by 3,000 plus former players in the concussion lawsuits. It's an extremely serious situation. What are your thoughts overall on the concussion situation with the NFL, and what can you tell us?
I'm one of those players in that lawsuit, and this is the reason why. I've played with a lot of concussions that I didn't know were major concussions. Back in the day, they said you got dinged. So what they did is they opened up an ammonia capsule, put it under your nose. As long as you were okay and you weren't woozy, they stuck you back in the game. I don't know what's going to happen to me down the road, if anything at all, but I'm going to make sure that my family's going to be covered if something happens to me. I know that Roger Goodell and the NFL, they've been extremely proactive now about trying to protect players and the safety of the league. But going back to when I played in that era, that was just coming off the area where you could head slap a guy, things that you could get away with that now people don't even know, some of the rules that have changed so much. And I think that it's going to be a very long and hard battle. But the thing is, it's not about the money in that situation at all. It's about, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, my name's on that suit, my family's, they're going to be all right regardless. But I want to make sure if there's something that happened to me that I didn't know in that situation that would have a long-term effect, I want to make sure my family's covered. It's only another game. I'm not that old.
With the massive amount of money that college football now produces, and with the additional games, championship game, and with the new format with the national championship coming up, do you, in your opinion, feel like it's time to start sharing the wealth with some of the participants?
I think it's hard. If you want to pay the players, all of a sudden, Title IX is going to sue, all the other sports are going to sue, everybody's going to want a piece of the pie, you're going to have to pay every athlete that's on scholarship. And then the athletes that are on a scholarship, what about the walk-ons that contribute and they do as much work as the people on scholarship that may get a scholarship that don't get paid? I think it would create a lot of animosity. And then how do you judge it financially? Because if you look at a kid that's, let's say, in Starkville, Mississippi, his cost of living may be $600 a month. If you look at a kid in Southern California, his may be $1,500 a month. So how do you judge the parameters if you're going to give everybody the same, everybody different amounts? I just think it's going to open up a whole can of worms. And I think right now, with the money that's there, and it's going to continue to be there, and I'm really not a proponent of this playoff thing. You know, I think the BCS has done a terrific job of getting #1 versus #2 over the past decade or so. And that was the job that they had. That's what they were put in position to do. And I think that if you're a team from a conference that has a championship game, like the SEC, let's say if you're Arkansas, you go undefeated. You have to play another game, a conference championship game. Okay, now in the old format, you're in the national championship game. Now you've got to play in the 4-team playoff, which you have to play another game to get to the national championship game. Now, if you're one of the top teams in the country going through the toughest schedule, why do you have to pay? Why are you punished to play an additional game to get to the championship game? Now, if you're in the Big 12, and you're conference champions, you're sitting at home while everybody's playing a conference championship game. So you're not playing a conference championship game. So you get the extra rest, you get your players get to get healthy again, and you don't have that margin of error where you can lose another game. So the system now is, why would you punish a team that's gone through the juggernaut of the SEC that goes undefeated? Now they've got to play an additional game to get to the national championship game. And I know the revenues are there, and they're going to make a ton of money, and they may increase it to 8 teams down the road, but that's just my personal opinion. And I just want to see how it works out, because they really haven't figured out all the details in this yet.
I've got a couple questions. Mark, we had you on the show this morning, and the Dallas Cowboys topic was brought up. A lot of Dallas Cowboy fans here. You played when the rivalry between the Cowboys and Redskins meant something. And I want you to reflect on the intensity of that rivalry, maybe some of the players you played against, and some of the great players you played against in the NFL. And then after you take care of that, maybe comment on the Ohio State, the fact that you cover these programs and the amount of publicity and egos that run some of these schools and organizations. You see what happened at Ohio State and Penn State, and your reflections on what's happened in the offseason with those two programs.
Playing in the NFL, I played in a different era. The best players that I played against, Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White. Unfortunately, they were both in my same division, so I had a chance to visit them twice a year. Lawrence Taylor was phenomenal. He was probably one of the best athletes of all time in that era. And what he would do is he would rove around the football field, and he would try to find the weak link. So when he came to my side of the field, it was war. You know, if he was going to try to pass rush, I was going to get under the pile, I was going to step on his fingers, I was going to hit him in the ribs, because my idea was, he can run a 4 or 5 40 this way. My big butt can't back up that fast, and I can't slow him down. So if I figure if I ticked him off or he didn't want to be there, he'd go back and jump on somebody else's side. So I'd make sure when he was at the bottom of the pile, I was giving him the business, baby, big time. And we knew each other. We played against each other in college. We were all Americans, and after every game, he would come up and he would drop some lines on me that I could not keep in public. But those things happen. The Dallas Cowboys, we've always had a tremendous rivalry. In the past, it was created by George Allen with the Washington Redskins and then carried on by Joe Gibbs. A lot of players for the Cowboys, believe it or not, I have respect for. There's a lot of them I didn't. And Randy White and I had a feud for years. And he wasn't even playing across from me. And he would play across from Russ Grimm, the other side on the guard. And I would get into Randy, and we'd go down the field, and we would hit each other and cheap shot each other and call each other names the whole game long. I come back to the huddle one time, and I see Russ, and he's calling me every name in the book. His helmet's twisted like this. He's going, "May, shut your mouth." And I'm saying, "But Russ, I got him where I want him." He's like, "You jackrabbit, he's playing across from me." So those are some of the good old days back in the day. But I could really tick off some people. I was good at that. Ask Coach Holtz. But looking at the situation this year in college football, and this is probably the worst of the worst in my own personal opinion for college football in the offseason. This is the biggest story, what's happened at Penn State, probably in my lifetime since the plane crash at Marshall when they lost their football team. And the reason why is because it was protected, it was covered up, and it was protected by the hypocrisy of the people at Penn State. That I know that every time when Joe Paterno and those people would come out and say, "Penn State forever, builder of men, this is the way we do it our way, we build young men with character, we do it this way, it's the Penn State way," it's all came down in a house of cards. And I get really personal about this, that how could any man worth his salt not put an end and not worry about his career about stopping a child molester? I mean, I just don't understand how a person with that type of character could let this go on and not do or say anything to the authorities, to anybody, to stop that. And it's about as bad as it gets in college football. And hopefully everyone that's involved will get their just dues. Next question.
First of all, we hope game day is in Fayetteville on the third week.
Repeat that.
I can't be bought, but I can be bribed.
Secondly, Tony Barnhart has said that the SEC will probably establish an SEC network. From an ESPN's perspective, how that changes the dynamics. That's a good idea.
I think it's going to be difficult because the Big Ten has been the best at doing this, and every conference is going to try it. The Pac-12 is going to try it. Theirs started up about a week ago. It's not really going to hurt ESPN because we're going to get the marquee games, because in the contracts that we have, we're always going to get the marquee games. Some of the games that we're not going to get are probably going to be some of the non-conference games that are, you know, a mid-major versus a major conference, or like if Arkansas is playing. No, I didn't say that. You said that. I was going to say some like Louisiana Northeast South directional school, but you said Arkansas State. But some of those games will probably be on a network, and then they'll also have other sports like volleyball and some other sports. They may compete with ESPNU, but I think competing against ESPN, it's one of those things that's amazing. People either love it or they hate ESPN, wherever I go. And the thing is, when I used to look at ESPN working at a network, it was like, you know, it's interesting, they're involved, they have all the sports, they have all the product. But then now when I'm there, it's like now we're fighting to keep the product. And it's just been amazing because the way the other networks have grown and the other cable entities have grown, they're trying to cherry pick our product. And to me personally, I think we do a great job at it. So, you know, I want to see how Fox and how NBC, how they do their other cable entities and how they perform this year and how the Pac-12 network performs. But for the SEC, you know if they do it, it's going to be successful one way or another. It's going to be a tough road, but it's going to be successful. And I know they have the Longhorn network. I know that that's an uphill climb, but they're still battling that and they're still doing a good job with that. Yes?
How do you see conference realignment and expansion?
Good question. I'll tell you what. Does this make any sense to you? San Diego State and Boise State next year are going to be in the Big East Conference. Missouri is in the Southeastern Conference. Texas A&M is in the Southeastern Conference. Are either one of those schools, one may be South, but are any of them East? I can't figure those things out. You know, why do you take things across the country and just pack everything in? I think it should be more regionalized, or they're going to have to change their names. And here's another oxymoron for you. Why does the Big 12 have 10 teams and the Big 10 have 12 teams?
Good question.
You know, I wasn't a math major, but I can figure that one out. But the realignment, I think that right now they're probably going to put their foot on the brakes for a little while and slow it down. And I think right now, with the realignment we have, I don't think they really want to grow that much. So I think you're going to see Pittsburgh and Syracuse go to the ACC next year also. And I think right now they're about set where they want to be. I know they're talking about super conferences, like down the road they're going to have 5 super conferences and the Big East is going to be left out. But I think they're going to probably stop about then, because if you continue to keep adding teams to the conference, you're going to have 18 teams in a conference and you're going to have 2 huge divisions. You're going to have a national champion with 2 or 3 losses every year, because they're going to just eat each other alive. So I think and I hope it's about where it ends right now. Is that it? All right, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I'd have a wonderful time here. I've been to Fayetteville before. I just stopped in Little Rock. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mark May, everybody. Give him a round of applause. Thank you, Mark. Great job. We will see you next week. John Robinson, former coach at USC and Embassy at the Embassy in West Little Rock. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Outstanding.
Mark, we'll see you in Miami.
I hope so. I hope so. I'd love to.